week of November 14th, 2016. We're into the middle of November now, and I think that everybody can agree that it's time to, as an old friend of mine once said, get back to our knitting. Let's do a lot of good work on this podcast, and let's talk about the stuff that you need to know. So this week, in that spirit, I wanted to talk about a little bit about antenna impedance, and it's going to be a strange conversation because I'm not really going to talk about the science of impedance because that's really not terribly important. There's a really rough definition of impedance which has to do with how much a particular material resists or reflects any particular signal that's trying to go through it. And the point is that's really not important. What is important is that when you look at antennas, there's two kinds of cable. Well, three, but I'll get to that third one a little bit later in the show. There's the old flat kind that you probably remember putting up when you were a kid, and there's the new round kind, which we call coaxial. The old flat kind we also call 300 ohm cable because it is a reference to the impedance of that cable, and that's about all I'm going to say about impedance, is that that's how we name stuff. The new kind we call coaxial cable. And really, you just don't see that old flat type anymore. And that doesn't come down to so much of the impedance, but more to the fact that coaxial cable, if you will, is better at shielding the signal that you want to send down it. That old flat cable was cheap, which was great, of course, when copper was super expensive, and when, let's face it, honestly, everything electrical or electronic was a lot more expensive at one time than it is now. So you just, you had to do it on a budget. Today, making cable is a lot less expensive, so cables themselves are a lot less expensive, and so an antenna cable can benefit from the extra shielding that comes from a coaxial cable. See, really in a coaxial cable, the signal itself travels down the center and kind of expands out through that white foam, and the outer metal part is really shielding to try to keep outside signals out, meaning that only what comes through your actual antenna goes down the cable. You remember when I said there was a third kind of cable? Well, let's explain that pretty quickly. Coaxial cable for antennas, cell boosters, satellite, almost everything that you personally are interested in, has an impedance of 75 ohms, lower than the impedance of an antenna. And we use something called a balun, which is a balanced to unbalanced converter that converts the impedance of the signal going through the antenna, because antennas themselves have an impedance of about 300 ohms, to the impedance of a cable, which is 75 ohms. But you see, there is another kind of coaxial cable with an impedance of 50 ohms, and I only mention this because you don't want to buy it in general. 50 ohm cable generally has a different kind of connector on the end of it, so you probably wouldn't be able to use it anyway, and it's designed for commercial equipment. Ultra-low impedance cables, at one point, the feeling was they could go longer because there was less resistance to the signal. But the truth is there isn't a huge amount of difference between a properly constructed 50 ohm cable and a properly constructed 75 ohm cable, which is why things like satellite and cellular boosters tend to only use those 75 ohm cables now. You can convert from one to another using something like a balun, although you really don't want to. Really, you want to use the right kind of cable at the specific case that you want to use it. Kind of going a little bit of circular logic there. Point is, we come down to the end of a podcast, I try to keep into 5 minutes. Flat cable bad, round cable good. 75 ohm cable good, 50 ohm cable, you're probably not going to find it anyway, so don't worry about it, but bad. In the coming weeks, I look forward to giving you more tutorial content, more about antennas, satellite television, marine, even cellular technology that is the kind of stuff that you'll find at solidsignal.com. A little bit of plug for the folks who actually keep the lights on here. And in the meantime, have a great week, everybody.